Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we bring you day 423 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician and lawyer Mark Feygin. Today's special thanks for continuous support go to Bill S., Claire Adams, and Ellen Harvey. Thank you guys for helping us to continue this work. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Saturday, April 22nd. Time is 3 minutes past 10, same time as in Moscow. And we're doing our regular stream, day 423. Olexiy Arestovych, good evening. Good evening, everybody. We have 67,000 people starting with us today. We would appreciate if you continue sharing links, clicking like and subscribing if you have not done that yet. This is important, especially if you somehow have friends or people watching us from Russia, to share that. So, if you have not done it, subscribe to all three channels. If you are listening or watching that in English language, please subscribe to Privateer Station. Do not forget to click the bell button and subscribe to Feygin Live and Olexiy Arestovych. We have interesting streams coming out on both of our channels, so you don't miss whatever is released. Alright, let's start. Just a day before we had Rammstein, I think probably the last one before counteroffensive. We're not entirely sure, but very likely. There were interesting decisions made there, and I'm curious, what can you consider as the most important? And I suspect you might also consider that there are some decisions made there that were not published or made available to the public. But what do you think? Mark, there is no main decision, right? The main decision would be, oh, you mean planes? Yes, planes, jets, and long-range missiles. So I have a question in this regard. If the West one day would decide to help us make peace with Russia, and they'll be promising all kinds of defenses and everything and guarantees, do you think Ukrainians will believe them? I'm just looking at all the news coming out about possible new decisions, new peace decisions, and perhaps the West playing the role in that. I'm just thinking what Ukrainians will think about that. There was Minsk, 1, 2, 3. There is Budapest, another agreement that happened before, and none of them worked, right? So how can we trust, or how can we decide, okay, we can trust for that option, when right before the counteroffensive, what we were telling, we do need jets, we do need long-range missiles, you failed to deliver on that. And we will have to pay with our blood, with our people, to attain the same results without that equipment. So what are you implying here? I'm just saying that whenever it'll come time that the Western allies and other countries will come to try to push us, persuade us to sit down at the table and believe their guarantees of peace and all, it will be very difficult for us to make that decision. Because when we needed really, really important elements for the counteroffensive, like long-range missiles, we were not given those. And yeah, they did give a lot of ground equipment, a ton. We're really stuffed to the brim for the ground systems, but we're definitely lacking in the long-range compartment. And I keep explaining to our allies that the cost that we will pay, that we are paying by our troops and in our lives, is perhaps a couple dozen ATACMS and maybe a dozen jets. It's not even about the numbers, really. It's about unsealing, uncorking these options and the effect that will have on the enemy. As for the ground systems and munitions, yeah, we're good. We're good in that department, so no questions there. Is there anything, Mark, Olexiy, that perhaps was they made a decision, but they're just not making it public. We'll see. We'll see, Mark. But I have serious concerns that they indeed made these decisions about long-range missiles. All right, we are getting to 100,000 viewers. There are a lot of viewers joining as we speak. We've been live for only 5 minutes, and we do have a ton of subjects to discuss. So let's take a look at the map, perhaps. There are several Prigozhin statements that I would like to bring up in light of the map. So the main focal point is Bakhmut. It's in the center of the map. That's where they're saying Russian troops are moving. And as they're saying, they're moving towards Ivanovskaya and inside Bakhmut itself. And it's PMC Wagner spearheading the war effort on that part of the front. So, what is the dynamic in that part of the front line? Can Bakhmut fall before the 1st of May? Mark, I'm not a specialist in Bakhmut falling, but I can confirm that situation there is very difficult, and our enemies are using numerical and quantitative advantage in artillery in that part of the front, and they're pressing us real hard there. Situation is very difficult. We'll see. So, do you think that the threat of closing the pincer movement, there is some argument going between Pushilin and Prigozhin, where one is saying that his troops are already completed operative encirclement, and the other is saying bullshit. So how do you think? So how true is that? What do you think? Operative encirclement is a very serious term. It means that we're fully surrounded. Not us, or just any group is fully surrounded, and their supply lines are completely cut. It can mean that there's no full circle, but there is a very difficult supply, and the north and southern pincers have closed. That is not what's happening in reality. It's nowhere near that. Situation is very difficult in the city. Northern and southern flanks are held pretty well by our troops, and that's why they moved their main effort to the center of the city. But there, everything is being leveled by peons and 150mm artillery, so it is very difficult to hold that area because this is a difficult proposition to stand and continue holding your positions under such artillery fire. All right, and on the other parts of the front, all along the line, there are mostly no major changes there because there are ongoing local engagements happening on the tactical level. The enemy concentrating their main effort near Bakhmut, and we are reserving our forces on other theaters. If anything, it's only tactical on different other parts on the level of battalions for just enhancing their tactical disposition on the front line. So anything hot near Avdiivka as well? Yeah, they're trying to repeat Bakhmut there as well and to complete their pincer motion, but they're not too active. The level of effort there is much lower. Similar motion near Kremenная, attempts to do something near Ugledar down south in Pavlovka. In Kherson, there's a lot of artillery duels. There is a bunch of towns suffered today in Donetsk region, a lot of dead civilians, including a child. So, although overall there are mostly tactical actions on the front, I think it's a lull before the big storm. And right now on the front, it's a positional dead end. The task of our counteroffensive will be to break that situation because it is very undesirable for us, and we need to regain the initiative. All right. So you probably heard that Prigozhin made a statement that son of President's spokesperson Peskov. His last name is Chose. They all have like 10 last names. That's by the last name of his mother, the first wife of Peskov, who remarried with a British citizen, and that's why Chose, and he lived in Britain for a while. So there was a story, there was a prank at the beginning of this war. Some journalists called him as if they are military conscription service and told him to show up with his documents and things at the conscription point, and he was answering on the phone, "Do you even know who am I? And I'm not coming anywhere. You guys will get a phone call from up above." So now Prigozhin came out and said that, yeah, Peskov told him to take his son into the artillery detachment. What artillery specialist he is, I don't know. But yeah, he said that his son was in dirt and mud and shit, and that's his words. It's not me being bad mouthed here on the show. So Peskov says that his son was on the front for a while and served, and as an artillery specialist, I don't think he's an artillery specialist. I think he's a masturbator. But so Mark, I think Prigozhin made a pun in Peskov's direction. You think so? Well, yeah, because as a version, as an possible scenario, because where can he go now? Because if he's a citizen of United Kingdom and he served in the criminally recognized organization, his propositions for the future are very interesting. So, oh, that's an interesting angle. I didn't even think about that. Prigozhin referred to Peskov as the liberal. Well, he's not a liberal. He's as liberal as you and me are the leaders of LGBTQ movement in Europe. But yeah, he indeed said that Peskov is a liberal and his son is an artillery specialist. So, do you think he really attacked them this way? I think that we cannot exclude that. That could be a pun in Peskov's direction. Oh, that's interesting. I have not even considered this option. Of course, we cannot exclude that he indeed is saying that, okay, that person served, so stop all the questions. But if you analyze it proper, the consequences may be very unintended. Because if he at least has citizenship of Britain, or perhaps he has a green card, well, yeah, green card or some sort of document to live there, he definitely has. And I think British special services do need to, or investigators do need to come see his mom in the UK to verify that her son is serving in private mercenary corps Wagner, who is being recognized by Americans as a criminal organization, and a bunch of countries in Europe recognized as terrorist organization. So perhaps come visit the family and ask where the son is. Is he indeed working as artillery specialist in this org? For that, yeah, the consequences may be pretty dire. Interesting. That's good we're discussing it, because people in the chat were saying, why even discussing Peskov? Well, that's why. Because it's like in the classics, it's the destiny of the human. One note and he's gone. Another piece of news is about the bomb that fell on Belgrade. What do you think about that? And oh, Mark, it's a holy thing for Russians to bomb Voronezh, to bomb their own cities. Actually, two bombs, to be careful. Oh yeah, right, there are two. These are 500s. 500s, they're heavy bombs. That's 1,000 pounds plus, and just the trace of that after falling on the ground, it's at least 5 meters deep and 10 meters wide. Could it have fallen by itself? Well, Mark, in theory, yeah, it could have. During the Cold War, both sides even lost some of the nuclear bombs, but it's very atypical. So, does it mean that it's really bad in the way either equipment is falling apart, or they were drunk and decided to drop things on the wrong city? Well, I would pose the question here: why are the routes of battle aviation carrying live munitions go over well-populated cities and areas? So if I was a citizen of Belgrade, I would be asking a lot of uncomfortable questions of the military leadership. Why is live munition being flown over their heads? And yeah, these bombs are falling. Exactly. That's an interesting one. At first I thought that bombs they can't really fall by themselves. I thought there was something, maybe Ukraine sends Strij or something UAV to attack elements or something in Belgorod, because it was hard to believe that not even one but two bombs rolled and fell out of the jet as it was passing over. FAB 500, those are that's wild. These are heavy bombs. That's the thing. They may do the same thing with their nukes. They'll be bringing something tactical to the front and then drop it on their own. Well, if you look back in the Cold War times, there were actually situations when, yeah, some nukes fell out or the planes went down, and in one case they didn't even find them out of the ocean, didn't recover. So it's a curious story, though. With yeah, it's our archetypical Russian saying that yeah, let's. What's your answer? Let's bomb Voronezh. Exactly, and then they point fingers at Ukraine attacking their territory. You don't need Ukraine. You're bombing yourself. And frankly, Mark, not a single UAV that we have can carry 500 kilo bomb. It just doesn't have the capacity. And yeah, they acknowledge it themselves due to some technical difficulty. The bomb fell as the jet was passing Belgorod. But yeah, it's if you saw the videos and pictures, one of the vehicles on that street nearby the explosion actually was taken up by the explosive wave and thrown on the roof of the nearby supermarket. So yeah, I would pose the first question to their command if I was a Russian citizen. What the F? Why planes with live ammunition are flying over our heads? All right, there are about 182,000 watching us live. About 60,000 click the like button. Please do not forget that it's not just you who want to watch our stream. Other people also would love to do that, and you can definitely help them to see it by sharing, clicking the like button, and subscribing, because that's how we get new viewers, or remind the existing ones that we're up. All right, let's continue. You know that Germany expelled about 20 people of Russian diplomats. And for those to understand who are watching us, that in European countries such as Germany, France, Britain, there are no diplomats. There are no diplomats in Russian embassies. They're fully staffed and populated with representatives of military intel, of other intelligence officers, and the specialists building their networks, their residence networks in Europe. So, and everybody knows that. Of course, we understand that Western embassies are also rich in intel officers, but, well, yeah, there is a difference, because in the Western embassies, there are some diplomats too. Right, in these ones, they're not. But also, Olexiy, Western embassies do not kill, do not assassinate people in Moscow and other cities in Russia, like Russians keep doing in Europe when they transfer arms and then people die one way or another. We haven't heard about German diplomats who killed somebody in Moscow, or Americans who, I don't know, would have assassinated Snowden, just like the Russian agents tried to poison Skripal family and killed more people. So out of 90 German diplomats, they expelled 34. And I wanted to put a bridge here to Pistorius, to the Minister of Defense of Germany, who actually made a statement during Rammstein that why are you surprised that Russian territory is considered as a military target? Because you are waging a war, of course, you are attacking their territory, they will attack yours. And that caused a shock on the Russian side. Zakharova, the spokesperson for the Foreign Affairs, came out grasping for air and trying to imply that this is horrible, this should have never happened. And Germany, in the meantime, with the Western allies, are continuing to support Ukraine. They also set up the repair shop in Poland for their tanks, for Leopards that are being transferred to Ukraine. So what do you say about that? Mark, I'll say this: that our viewers of the show are maybe not fully aware, but since the beginning of war, there is a ton of countries in Europe who actually cleansed and purged a bunch of Russian agents. Germans, Swedes, Italians. Not sure about France. I'll need to double check that, but they indeed expelled a ton of Russian networks and people with ties to intel services out of their countries. And there was actually a good article at the beginning of this war that Russian capabilities for subversion and pulling out different activities in Europe severely culled as a result of these actions. And there was an Argentinian scandal because Russians approached or populated some of their positions in Europe, positions of influence via Argentina. And that's an old story too. They used that influence from Latin America. But yeah, Europe was very good in purging those, and it means that Russian system of intelligence services are going through a serious crisis because it'll be a difficult issue for them in the future to try to rebuild it when time comes. So this is a big issue for them, and Europe is becoming healthier, and it's nice to see them. Oh, I'm getting notes in the chat that Kharkov is being hit as we speak. So Russia is attacking Kharkov at this hour. Yes, they are. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Kharkov wasn't attacked for a while now. Yeah, Kharkov mayor and the leader of their territorial defense came out and said that they are being shelled now. They advised people, citizens, to seek shelter. And oh, I forgot to mention that there were actually several very heavy engagements near Mariinka today. So together between them and Avdiivka and Mariinka direction, we had to endure about 40 different attacks during the last 24 hours. All right, thank you. Now the international news. European Union is planning to completely ban transit of certain goods through the territory of Russia as a part of their sanctions package that is being prepared now, the next one. And they're confirming that several transport vehicles will be banned for transit through Russia, and a bunch of other goods are also falling into that prohibited category. So, together with the statement made by G7 about complete embargo, yeah, countries of G7 came out and said, let's just embargo everything. And here in Europe, they're making a decision to also stop the transit of certain dual-use goods. And yeah, that's been a known problem because they were pretending that the goods are transiting through the territory, transitioning through the territory of Russia to China or somewhere else, but in reality, that they just get off the radar there and disappear, and being used for whatever purposes, sometimes related with fighting this war. So a typical dual-use technology and equipment. So how do you think effective? How effective do you think it can be? That and the overall embargo of G7. Our president made his judgment on that today, and he did say that the main task is to preclude Russia from avoiding and finding loopholes in the sanctions. Because we have taken enough, but now we're finding the loopholes and gray schemas that Russia is doing with their trading partners. So now the West, together with us, is trying to block possible routes that they use to evade sanctions. And one of them was a transit of goods through Russia. And G7 and the summit that is due to happen in Tokyo in May, they're already talking about prohibiting everything, all exports to Russia. And after that, Dmitry Medvedev, the ambassador of Calvin Klein, otherwise known as, he made a statement. Olexiy, he's not the face of Calvin Klein, right? He's something else of that company. So yeah, he did come out and say that it'll lead to the crash of the world economy. It's overall worth of $20 to $30 billion. The world economy would not even notice. wouldn't even hiccup because it's in the range of margin of error. But for Russia, the ban of bringing any goods from G7 will have a lot of interesting consequences. Yeah, they'll actually lose access to a lot of goods that are important for them technologically. So they should be feeling the pressure right now. And I'm trying to understand for myself what can that be related with. Do you think it could be related with the counteroffensive? But no, Mark, that's a question because all these statements, all these decisions will not play out during the counteroffensive. It's a long range, even the effects of it will come later. So I think it might be a longer game with China on the global arena because now Russia will have to face that they have to work with China and their payment systems to even bring anything, to even import things. And that could have been the stance of G7 against China position, and it may be an attempt to force Russia into rearranging their currency reserves. And in Europe, they are not big fans of using Chinese yuans too, because in reality, every deal that you work with China in their currency is essentially sanctioned by their central bank, by the central bank of the communist regime. But these games are definitely not appreciated by G7, and I think they are pushing towards China. They're pushing back, saying, "Well, we will call some of the initiatives here will affect your position on the in the world." So we'll see. We'll see. I don't think it's connected directly to the counteroffensive. I think it's a bigger economic game. I also wanted to bring Lulu, president of Brazil. He's so active. He just unimaginably. The last news, for example, Brasilia President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva made a statement that he will not visit neither Russia nor Ukraine until there'll be conditions for ceasefire, for stopping the hot engagement. Lula da Silva made a statement in Portugal that he thinks a group of countries need to be formed that will find a solution, a peaceful solution to this conflict. And Diario Genetissima newspaper is bringing up his words that it's always better to look for peace at the table instead of at the battlefront. So this is the person who is very left, who was accused of corruption, and I think fairly so. But for some reason, he is being so active about the Ukrainian conflict. Where's Brazil and where's Eastern Europe, right, on the map? But he even visited Beijing. He made several loud statements that Ukraine could possibly sacrifice Crimea to reach peace. But I think, and I want to hear your opinion, that Brazil is a member of BRICS countries. And by the way, Lavrov is also visiting Brazil soon, Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs. So, do you think that activity can be related to that? And I don't know if anybody is even calling him or remembering him in Ukraine, and nobody was thinking about using him as a meaningful figure or as an intermediary in this conflict. So that's kind of out of the blue. Where is that coming from? What's your opinion? I think this may be some games in the format of BRICS before Lavrov's visit, and perhaps he is going to play on some China-Russian interests and maybe change their relations and the balance of power there, and get himself injected in economic and political schemes. And you'd understand that Brazil, being so far from the conflict, these emotions and these activities can be dictated only by something internal. So they probably have to make decisions, and perhaps they need to make decisions in their BRICS format between Russia and China. And he found a format how to replace Russia with China, I guess. But since he is a pretty extravagant political figure, there could be additional interests on the map. But I'm thinking that very likely the rebalancing of Brazil between Russian and Chinese interests. And one needs to be a good specialist in their economic relations to comment smart on what he could be fishing for. But it would be good to also check who is presiding in BRICS. I think India. No, Mark, I don't know, but they're changing, right? They're rotating too. Yeah, I could be wrong. You guys, yeah, mention in the chat if you know. So, do you think it could be an attempt of China through that Lulu to inspire certain topics and bring them back to the table? That he announced 12 principles of peacemaking. You think that China is playing Brazil? Maybe, you know what could have been is that China is forming position of Lulu before the visit of Lavrov to Brazil. So they may be playing an angle there to affect Brazil and Russia relations and perhaps want to correct their current disposition and send a message to Kremlin so that Kremlin would hear two voices, not just Chinese voice. So that there would be at least two members of BRICS pushing Russia towards a peace treaty, or at least towards a de-escalation on that front. And if they're not listening to China, perhaps China could be using Brazil for that, but that's a very specific story. G20, by the way, is going to be in South Africa, and South Africa is also the member of BRICS. So it'll be interesting to see what angles are there. It's not enough data for deep analysis. But you already heard that Putin made statement that they're not visiting. I think Erdogan mentioned that Putin will not visit the nuclear station they're opening in Turkey. He will only attend that event online, and there was some hustle around that. There were some expectations. Will he come? Will he not come? But I'm thinking he's probably afraid, right? Because, and not so much of the criminal court, but perhaps of, other enemies of his person. Budanov, for example, from Ukraine, the head of special services. So, yeah, Mark, Turkey is a NATO country. So, and he won't even visit South Africa, Olexiy, right? South Africa, yeah, that's another problem. They have ratified the Roman Statute, so they would technically have to arrest him, but they did violate it before with Bashar Assad, yeah. But for Putin, it's another technical issue. We discussed that before. How do you fly? How does his plane fly to South Africa from Russia? Because he'll need to land somewhere, and they'll need to plan the route because they might be forced to land if they're going over some country that wants to arrest him. And many countries will not want them to land for refueling, so it's a difficult situation for them. They will probably choose to not go anywhere. So you think he'll be just stuck in Russia without going anywhere? Well, Mark, it's that and also the counteroffensive, right? Because he needs to be back in his bunker because you never know how things will turn out. I think he'll choose to keep his hand on the pulse and remain there in Russia. Yeah, there is some muted discussion about it, but I don't think he'll start risking anything. Okay, so next topic are May 9th parades in Russia, the holiday remembering the victory in the Second World War. And they used to have parades and special events, and they probably will not have. They have a special action called the undead detachment or not dead detachment or still alive detachment. We can joke about it as undead, but they're trying to block it too because normally people will be out carrying the pictures of their grandmothers, grandfathers who died in the time of Second World War as a memory, as a tribute to them, for those who have fallen during the Second World War. But these days it actually causes more issues because they could be bringing other pictures. They could be bringing pictures of the current victims or current dead, I wouldn't say victims, current dead soldiers who fought in Ukraine on their side and died. So, and even if they don't dare to bring out the pictures of their new casualties, they could still converse and discuss, because there could be people from different cities aggregating in Moscow and starting the discussion. When one thing is when they talk about that within the city, because they do know how many times a certain detachment lost their personnel, that it's almost three times over now. And now they'll see a bigger picture, that it's not just them, that it's not just Tula, it's also Pskov and other cities. And that could be a political angle there. Oh, interesting. Then I guess next year and 5 years from now, they'll probably call this initiative and nobody will walking with portraits anymore. I think it's situational, because this year they definitely do not want any conversations about dead soldiers, especially under the pretense of being on a big event like that, and they want to stop all these conversations. Just conversation between people can change a lot of things. They are living in information bubbles, and these things are real. I was thinking about the angle to that. No, 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 Mark. Information bubbles are a serious influence on people. A lot of people are stuck in their information bubbles. Imagine there is a city, Pskov, for example, in Russia, where local special services and police are telling people and families of the dead soldiers, do not, you can talk internally, but do not talk to anybody else. Do not talk on the social media. And if you are talking to somebody, also tell us whom did you talk to. And now imagine people from that city and other cities come and join together on some event. Then, oh yeah, they'll talk in their cities as well. Well, yeah, but it's your own city, right? Nobody will come from Tula to Pskov, for example. Of course, right? There's no reason for them. But you think they'll go to Moscow? Well, imagine they would. Imagine they would, because Moscow is somewhat of a central action, central point for that parade. And people gather there, start exchanging their information. What's happening? Oh, our detachment lost 95% of the officers. And what's in your place? Oh, we lost our personnel three times over. And then somebody else comes over and says, oh, in Novorossiysk is also big losses. And imagine these people are coming back to their country, to their cities, and talking to their relatives and saying, well, it's not just us, it's apparently everywhere. And then some people will start talking to their friends, giving interviews, posting online. So they are trying to control that scene. I think you do not even want to go in that direction, because it just causes more headache for the government. People over exaggerate the reach of the information technology in our day, but there are many families and many people who still do not are not fully online, or they read it with a grain of salt. The real communication may change things. All right, we have about 260,000 with us. 87,000 click the like button. Okay, I'm leaving the frame because we're not at 100k likes. Hey, everybody, please click the like button to bring Olexiy back, and do not forget to share links in your social media and everywhere where you discuss political topics, to help us bring new eyes to our discussions. All right, so next one. There was a piece of news about President Zelensky, who signed the law about decolonization of toponymics. That's the law that they introduced in their Congress in the Ukraine, and basically it implies renaming and cleansing some of the names that were forced by Soviet Union back in the day. So that topic is still somewhat hot in Ukraine, and the process that Ukraine will use to clean and change the names of towns, parks, schools, libraries, etc. So you think this process will be intensive, given the war and everything happening, and just pushing everything Russian out of the frame? Because I think this law is specifically targeting these connections. And Mark, I don't know. I have very specific relation to this topic. You can tell us. No, I'm not going to play that here. I may tell after the war. But there is a decision by president, so they will be renaming certain places, and how they'll do that and what names they'll bring back, we'll see. Yeah, he also signed another one about the new sanctions. Oh yeah, Pamfilova from Russia already reacted to that walking snack barrel-shaped lady from Russian Congress is saying very upset that Zelensky introducing adding Russian election committee to the sanctions. She's saying he's a comedian. This is not the group to add to sanctions. Well, speaking, yeah, we'll see how that unfolds, Mark. I wanted to also coming back to your previous question about the names in Ukraine. Remember Ukrainian Railroad, the main part near Kiev? It's called Southwestern Railroad. Now, from direction of whom is it Southwestern? Now I think it's called Central Kiev. It was Southwestern in relation to Moscow. So it was implied that Moscow is the center. And this is one of the examples of this decolonization. So one needs to be careful considering names and all. Some of them do make sense. Will we be accurate? Will we make the right choices? I hope. The idea was right, but we'll see. We'll see how it unfolds. It does take smart implementation. All right, we've been live for about 41 minutes, and people are writing in chat. We do want you to discuss Stoltenberg's visit as well. Well, we just have a gap. Usually it's every other day, but between Wednesday and Saturday, there are a couple days. And his visit did happen without our stream. But regardless, there were some things discussed in public about NATO and possible joining of Ukraine. And I wanted to conclude today's stream with that topic. So, do you think Ukraine is getting closer to joining NATO with the Stoltenberg visit and his statements? And what decisions do you think we should expect from the summit in Vilnius in July? Well, Mark, you made a statement that actually surprised me. He made a statement that NATO countries are ready and eager to accept Ukraine, to which Urban from Hungary posted a question, what? So here we can think that either Stoltenberg made an extra compliment to certain countries that are on the fence, which he has not done before, or they already figured a way to convince Hungary and change their position when time comes. And yeah, they basically may come out later and say that we convinced them with our hands and arms and other objects, and now they decided to also approve of Ukraine, speaking of Hungary. But perhaps they know something and they might come to certain agreement between each other. I'm not too giddy to cheer that yet, because there are other signals that there are countries that are very skeptical about us joining NATO. And then on the other hand, there are statements by Stoltenberg like that. So what is there are definitely a bunch of confirmations that after the war, this is a possibility, which is important for us, because if we are to trust Russian leadership that they want to increase their military machine, so essentially they would be preparing for the second round of this war somewhere around 2027, then for us to preclude that is to either become super strong, where in Moscow they would just say, oh, God forbid, no, we're not going there, or to bring nukes back to Ukraine, or to join NATO. And then in this case, there'll be no discussions about possible war, obviously. Or maybe a third would be if we get guarantees of security, but that will remains to be seen, because we still haven't seen any of those that are worthy yet. So the easiest of these would be to join NATO. The goal of our country is to join NATO. We even have it outlined in our constitution, and all the country supports of that. But we also do see the position of Hungary, for example, position of Germany as well, which in the morning can say one thing and the evening can say another. So it is also somewhat indecisive. So if the statement is true, this is one of the strongest statements I've heard. That is a historic statement in this case. But as every historic statement, I want to be very skeptical until it happens. I want to make sure that these things actually unfold if it's not torn out of the context. So I had to brush the way he made a statement in, how did he word it in his language. And I think cautiously we can cross the fingers. And perhaps at the end of the war, there'll be, or maybe after Vilnius summit, there'll be some document that will outline the map for Ukraine, how to join NATO. But if indeed it's true, this would mean a global change in the world. All right, that's interesting. We've been live for 45 minutes. Over 250,000 are with us. Over 100,000 click the like button. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for sticking with us. And please continue sharing links to that stream, clicking the like button. And do not forget to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you have not done that yet. The links are in the description. And don't forget to click that bell. Tomorrow I'll have Yulia Latynina on my channel. We'll be discussing Putin's doubles. We'll be analyzing his second chins, noses, and ears. It must be a fun stream. We'll laugh quite a bit. Oh yeah, Yulia is very detail-oriented. So yeah, we'll have videos. It'll be interesting. All right, and thank you, Olexiy. We'll see you on Monday, as usual, at 10 p.m. Thank you, and have a good weekend. Goodbye. Good luck.